hugged her arm. Unresponsive, she stared ahead at the mirror. My heart sank and I became overwhelmed with a feeling of dread. Slowly I looked up. There in the mirror, we saw the back of a maid pushing a service trolley. She was moving towards us. We belted back to my room and hid under the quilt. We heard the squeaking of wheels pass us and stop. We didn't dare to look, and we stayed there until morning. I will never forget these events. My parents used to live in a different house before I was born. It was a very old house, rather cold and drafty and creaky like most houses are. But one night, something very strange happened to my mother. My dad had gone out with his friends one evening, leaving my mother home alone. It was around 9:30, and my mum hears a car pull up into the driveway and sees the lights flashing into the house. She finds it very strange. It was a very early time for my dad to get home. She thought maybe he decided to come home early for some reason, but became more freaked out when the light to the laundry room, where the back door leads to, turned on by itself, and she swore she could see the outline of someone inside that room from underneath the door. It was at that moment that her cat started hissing and growling at the door, which was very unusual since she wouldn't hiss at anyone she didn't know. It was, and then went to have a look at the car in the driveway as no one had opened the front door. There was no one there, and there was no way a car could have got out without making a sound. She still has no idea what it could have been. I used to work as a machine operator for a factory doing the graveyard shift. It was only me on the floor and a supervisor in the office, and for the most part, it was always a two-man shift. Sometimes, he would come to help me bring stock materials from the back. You see, the back and was skeptical about what I was told, and for the first week, nothing unnatural happened, which of course only reinforced my skepticism. However, as time went by, I started instances though happened a few months later. My supervisor had just finished helping me with a task, and he told me that he would be in the office if I needed him. I'm carrying on with my work when about 20 minutes later I hear a colossal crashing noise from the back storage room. It scared the shit out of me. At first, I assumed that it must have been him in the back room and that he crashed the forklift into the wall. But when I went to call him, he was already walking towards me and demanded to know what the noise was, because he was in his office at the time and assumed it was me. I told him that I had been in there the whole time, and that I thought it had been him who had made the noise. We were both visibly shaken, and mutually agreed to check it out. Like previous instances, the back storage lights were off and it was eerie quiet. We turned the lights on, and then we saw barrels toppled over and a broken crate with stock materials all over the ground. These crates are on shelves about 5 feet off the ground, and the barrels are completely full and very difficult to move. We cleaned it up, and he used a forklift to put the replacement crate with the materials back on the shelf. In the time it took us to fix up the mess, it was lunch break. He went out to get food, and I was alone operating the machines again in this big factory the size of 2 football fields. I wasn't troubled or scared, knowing that he would be back in about half an hour. But as the minutes ticked by, I kept hearing something. It sounded like a woman whispering, and it was coming directly from the dark back room. I tried putting it off, and thinking that it was in my head. And then I heard something. It sounded like a barrel had fallen down again by itself. I need to clarify. These barrels are very, very heavy, and they cannot fall down independently without a great deal of force pushing them. When I went to investigate, I saw a barrel in the middle of the room, and I booked it out of there. When he got back, he asked me what I was doing outside, and I told him that I kept hearing some strange whispering from the dark room, and when I went to investigate, I found a barrel had managed to roll itself to the middle of the room, and that it had utterly terrified me. He didn't believe me, and thought that I was playing a practical joke on him, but the security camera, however, verified that the barrel just rolled out by itself from the dark storage area, which defies explanation. You can also clearly see me coming into view to check out where the barrel came from, and hurry back after turning off the machines. This prompted management to abolish the graveyard shift, and I quit shortly after. I was 10 years old and just started 5th grade. I had made a new friend in school, Janie. My parents allowed me to go for a sleepover at her house, even though they'd only met her mother once. And my mum and dad were pretty laid back, because I was their last child, and my sisters were 9 and 13 years older than me. So my mum dropped me off, said hello to Janie's mum, and left. Me and Janie started playing karaoke when her mum decided that she was going to leave. She said goodbye to us, gave us kisses on the cheek, and I remember that she smelled a bit like black licorice. Me and Janie were left to do whatever we wanted for the next 5 hours. Janie's older sister came home around 1 AM and told us that we should be going to bed because we were falling asleep on the couch, and so we went into Janie's room and laid in her bed. Later that night, I can't be sure what time it was because it was pitch black, but Janie's mum came home. I woke up to a pounding sound on Janie's bedroom door. I started yelling in fear when I felt a hand cover my mouth. It was Janie telling me to be quiet and pretend to be asleep. But at that moment,
it doesn't matter how
it was too late. Her mother had kicked in the door. She stormed over to the bed and grabbed Janie's face. She began screaming at Janie because we accidentally left the TV on. I was trying to hide under the covers, but she saw me, and she began slamming her fists on the bed around me and screamed, "You think you're better than me?" over and over. I was sobbing, and all I could think about was going home. I was so scared, and I begged her mum to let me call my parents because I felt sick. Her mum, though, grabbed my chin, looked me in the eyes and said, "I know what you're doing, little girl, and you aren't going anywhere until I say you can." She stormed out of the room, slamming the half-broken bedroom door behind her. Janie said nothing, and neither did I. Needless to say, I did not sleep that night, and in the morning when I went to call my mother, Janie's mother was on the phone. She wouldn't let me use it even though I asked multiple times. and finally when she was going to take a shower, I heard her pass the phone over to Janie's sister and said, "Don't let that little bitch use this phone. If you do, I ain't buying you cigarettes anymore." I was a sheltered kid, and at the time I overheard that, I knew that I had to get out of there. I approached Janie's sister, and she basically threw the phone at me. She was ready to give it to me before I even asked for it, and with a look of fear in her eyes, she said, "My mum is calling her guy, so you need to call home now." And so I did. She saved my life, and I still believe it to this day. Was her guy someone who was going to come and get rid of me? I shudder at the thought. The rest of the story isn't very exciting. My mother picked me up and I acted like nothing was wrong. 2 days later though, it was Parents' Day. Janie was in my class, which meant her mother was there as well. Her mother approached me and asked me why I never wanted to come over anymore, and she accused me of being a mean girl. She was talking to me in a way that seemed harmless, therefore wasn't obvious to my mum or teacher. I kept my mouth shut and didn't say a word. But 2 weeks later, my older sister was babysitting me whilst our parents were at the movies, and I broke down and told her what happened because I couldn't stop thinking about it. She comforted me and told my parents. We hugged each other and cried. A couple of weeks later, Janie stopped coming to school. My classmates wondered what happened, and so did I. I didn't want to ask my parents what happened. 15 years later, I heard from Janie on Facebook. There was no life-changing conversation, but we did exchange pleasantries. I suppose that's life sometimes. So crazy, alcoholic, abusive mother, let's never meet again. I was working in the third largest building on this planet for floor space. It was around 3 AM on a Sunday, and I was walking down an aisle in the middle of my department. At this time, the place was very nearly vacant, as it was a holiday weekend, and we had only myself and a skeleton crew of maintenance workers under my direction, working in another department, all of whom were males. As I'm walking by my office on the plant floor, the power goes out, and the plant drops into the most absolute darkness that I have ever experienced. With the power gone, I hear the various machines spinning down to rest, and the silence becomes overwhelming relative to the background noise that I had gotten used to. The faint sounds of running water become evident in the moments after the blackout, whilst I began searching my pockets for my phone and the flashlight that it offered. As my hand found the phone, a scream erupted from somewhere nearby, muffled and distant. It was the kind of scream that you hear from a 5-year-old girl in her first haunted house, as the bloody clown steps around the corner and fires up the chainsaw. It startled me very badly, and I immediately dropped my phone onto the ground. The scream continued, a constantly fading note that seemed to be moving away from my position. Panicked and terrified, I fumbled around the dirty floor for my phone, and found it seconds before the emergency lights lit the plant, with the eerie glow of yellow light. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I looked around me, muscles tense and ready to defend against whatever this was. I tried my radio a couple of times, before I realized that with the power outage, the digital frequencies were useless without the receivers up in the main office. I started to move through the various production lines to where I assumed the scream had originated, My mind was working furiously. I had no women in my crew tonight, and we were the only people allowed in the plant. So where had the scream come from? Details began to press into my mind that I had not noticed before. The apparent youth of the voice behind the scream made no sense, and it was a scream of pain, the kind that you cannot even attempt to control. It had faded away from my position gradually, and then trailed off as if she had run out of breath. As I stepped between two products, on one of the final assembly lines before a wide open space in the next apartment, the emergency lights dimmed, and the audible electricity buzz filled the space around me. Struggling to understand what was happening, my senses were again knocked askew when the normal plant lights blazed to life. This left spots across my vision for a moment, forcing me to raise my hand to shield my eyes. As the shadow crossed my vision, I saw it, or rather, I saw her, only for that moment. She stood there, hand outstretched towards me, a vague outline, partially hidden behind one of our products. Dark features were the only distinguishable characteristic that I can remember, as my reflex in that moment had been to blink against the bright lights, and after that, she was gone. To this day, I have no idea if what I saw was real, or if I had imagined it. No tales are told of the mysterious young woman in the repair hall, not by anyone but myself. No one knows of any deaths matching to her description in the area, or ghosts known to haunt the plant. Not a soul had heard a scream in the darkness, not before, during, or after those black pre-dawn minutes. Believe me, I've tried to find someone, anyone with information that might explain what I saw, but all to no avail. I'm left wondering, with a memory more crisp than any photograph I've ever seen, of that young woman standing in the distance, her arm outstretched towards me. Needless to say, I did not revisit the same location of the event, ever, because nopes don't get any bigger than that.
I used to work as a cashier at a BP that was right off the interstate. It doubled as a truck stop and was open 24 hours. I had worked there for about a year, so I was fairly comfortable with the job, and I was used to working night shifts alone, despite being a smaller person. So I was working one night, and everything was going as usual. It was about 1 a.m., and I saw a pickup truck pull in. 3 passengers got out and entered the store. The 2 men were wearing camouflage outfits, and the woman was wearing jeans and a sweater. The men talked to the woman outside of the door before entering, and then they all went straight to me at the counter and asked for some cigarettes. As the one man was paying, the other one went to the other side of the store, looking at drinks. I looked at the woman and realized that she had a look of panic on her face. I immediately felt in my gut that something bad was going on. We made eye contact, and she mouthed the words, "Help me." Then, the man grabbed his cigarettes with one hand and the woman's arm with the other, and yelled at his buddy that they were ready to go. I was only 19, and wasn't really sure what to do, so I waited until they walked out the door and slid my hand under the counter and hit the panic button. About 5 to 10 minutes later, the cops got there and I told them what happened. They looked at the surveillance videos and told me that they were investigating a kidnapping with a description of that same vehicle. I told them which direction they went on the interstate, and the rest of the officers left after them while I gave my statement to the one who stayed behind. I never did find out if they caught them or not. In college, I would go home every other weekend to work at the job I had since high school. I would drive directly from campus after my last class on Friday to my job. After my shift was done, I'd go back to my parents' house, which was out in the middle of nowhere. My parents weren't yet home when I got back from work. They often spent their Friday and Saturday evenings drinking, like they were the ones in college. So the house was dark, and since it was mid-fall, so was the yard, except for that one yard light. I pulled into my normal parking spot, got out of the car, and then turned to open the back door of my car and get my backpack out of the back seat. That's when I noticed that the bathroom light was on. Was that light on when I pulled up? It must have been, right? As I was contemplating the light and reaching for my backpack, there was suddenly a very angry-looking old woman standing in the window staring at me. She was very pissed off at me, and I knew it. We stood there staring at each other for a good 10 seconds when my parents pulled into the driveway and distracted me from my stare down. By the time I turned back, the light was still on, but the woman was gone. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. I had been driving about 45 minutes, and I was starting to get really tired. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. After it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull over and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass behind some bushes to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22, and then I fell asleep. Some time later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock. 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time, it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting my car. But why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a car parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door open. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like,
Hey you! Get out of the car now!
I sped off. I never saw the guy again. I once had to work at a very late shift at the funeral home to prepare a body for a viewing the following morning. I think I finally finished my work around midnight. It was winter, and I ended up getting snowed in at the funeral home that night. I had to stay the night until the plows came early in the morning to plow me out. Let me tell you, it is creepy as hell sleeping in a funeral home, knowing that there are 20 dead people in the basement, especially when you hear constant noises. I'm in college, and I live on a campus in a dorm room. This dorm is very old and community style. I've been living here for 2 months with my roommate, and everything has been fine. In the last week, we've had all of our lights in our room, just our room, go out. We've been trying to put maintenance requests in for the past week, but the website won't allow us to do it for some reason. Last night, I heard my roommate yelling from the hallway that her key wasn't working in the lock and that she needed in now. So I stumbled out of bed and was reaching for the lock on the door when I looked over and saw her asleep in her bed. I backed away from the door to go back to sleep, thinking that it had been a dream. I took a last look at my sleeping roommate and went to turn around to climb into my bed when I saw the shadow under the door. The door is a good inch or two off the ground, so I bent down to see if there was someone standing at our door, or the one across the hall. When I was eye level with the crack, I saw a pair of boots facing the door. Then, the person turned away, and I heard the stairwell door open. I couldn't even turn on the lights, because the bulbs were out, so I crawled into bed with my lamp, and sat there for an hour, because I was freaking out. To get onto the girls' floor, you have to have the student card of someone that lives here. They lock the building up at midnight every night to make sure that only students and guests are inside. We've had problems with homeless people sleeping in the basements of some of our buildings. I was freaking out because the boots at the door were men's boots. I could have swore I heard my roommate's voice. I took care of my mentally handicapped cousin a few years back. She could get around well enough, but due to severe arthritis in her knees and ankles, she had to be watched, helped into the bath, shit like that. I would go into her room in the morning, help her to her walker so she could go to the bathroom, and I would make her breakfast. One morning, I heard the water running in the bathroom when I went in to check on her. I had to pass her room on the way to the bathroom. When I did, I saw that she was in her rocking chair in the corner, her blanket over her head, and she was rocking back and forth. "Don't leave the water on, you're going to flood the place." I went into the bathroom to shut the faucet off, and my cousin was there, washing her face. I immediately ran back to the room, but it was just her blanket crumpled up on the rocking chair. My cousin wanted to know why I undid her bed. I didn't stay too long after that. When I was younger, I used to live by the woods and could see a cemetery from my back porch. One Easter, I remember waking up and seeing the Easter Bunny. I didn't tell anyone, but there was an extra Easter egg in my house that my parents didn't hide. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my parents if they ever dressed up like the Easter Bunny and came into our room. They said they would never go through so much trouble. Then, my younger sister, who I shared a bunk bed with when this happened, said she remembers when the Easter Bunny came into our room. I was terrified that we both remembered seeing a person dressed as a bunny in our room. To make it even weirder, I told the friends I sat with at lunch what happened. One of the girls was my neighbor across the street. She told me one Easter a long time ago, She looked out her window during the night and saw the Easter Bunny standing in her driveway. It gave me chills. To this day, I am terrified of people who wear that costume. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn. But of course, I always ended up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tired. One night, I wake up to a strange feeling, like an instinct. I just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of trees. In perfect light cast from the moon, I see a silhouette of someone in the tree in front of my house. The family dog dashes to the window and is snarling into the glass. Terrified, I run into my parents' room and try to explain to my parents that there is a strange person outside. My dad grabs something defensive. I tremble in my mom's arms until my dad comes back in and says that he saw no one and he wants me to go to bed. I decide to sleep in my regular bedroom. I tell my sister what happened. Dad is making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. Everything is silent and calm, and I finally think to myself, I can sleep. Nope. I notice the man outside my window. He gives me a hush signal and runs away. He just turns around to run a straight line away. Every bit of this story is true. I grew up playing pool, and going out of town for the weekend to play a tournament was common. My friends and I were in our early 20s and on a tight budget, so we decided to carpool and share a hotel room for the next tournament. We even found a fourth guy, Bert, to ride along with us. I had only met Bert once prior. He was a huge redneck with a wandering eye. Intimidating and drunk might be the best words to describe him. On the 3-hour ride to the tournament, Bert was already drunk and talking crazy shit about his wife. Apparently, they were going through a divorce and he was not happy about it. He eventually starts describing this fight where he has her on the floor with his foot on her neck and then cutting her throat. Everyone in the vehicle was like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? We all make it back home from the tournament, and the following Monday, I get a call. It's the cops. Holy shit. They asked me the strangest questions. About Bert. Did he have mud on his shoes? Did he mention his wife? What was his demeanor like on the trip? Weeks later, I would find out what really happened. Bert murdered his wife that Thursday night. The next afternoon, he gets in my car for a road trip. That fight that he described in the car wasn't just some fight. He was describing how he murdered her. I went on a road trip and shared a hotel room with this guy. I had a very frightening night last year. Out of the blue, I live by myself, and late in the night, I got a phone call. My cell phone's volume was down very low, and I couldn't hear it ring while I slept. I woke up for no particular reason about an hour after the call. I grabbed my phone and looked at the screen, and it was a private number. I went back to sleep and thought nothing of it. I woke up again a couple hours later, and I looked on my phone to see that the same number had called 15 more times. That was enough to wake me up completely, and I saw that I had 3 new voicemails from that number. I listened to the first one that was left. A man whispered into the phone,
I just crawled through the window in your dining room.
That obviously made my hair stand on end, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I sat in bed, terrified, for a few minutes, thinking of what I should do next. I listened to the second voicemail. The man then said into the phone,
"Your bedroom door is locked."
After hearing that, I immediately called 911. I told them somebody was in my house. They proceeded with questions, and I didn't hear a single one. I was so scared. I stayed on the phone with them until 2 officers showed up at my house, and they searched the place. Eventually, I felt comfortable enough to let them leave, and when they did, I listened to the third voicemail. The man whispered into the phone,
"I am hiding in your house."
After hearing that, I got in my car and drove to my sister's house and slept there that night. I didn't return home until the next day with more police officers, my sister, and her husband. The whole place was searched inside and out, and we all found nothing. Not a single sign of forced entry, nothing. Not a single phone call after that night. And I need to tell myself, it was just some kid trying to scare me. When I was in high school, you could say I had some mental issues. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I was depressed all the time and thought about killing myself regularly. My parents had me go off to a psychiatric institution for boys. I made friends with boys who were like me. They had similar problems and understood where I was coming from. This one day, a new boy arrived on our block. We all knew very quickly that he was a very special case. On his first day, he attacked another boy with a plastic spoon he had broken. He was put into private isolation where he received counseling every day, as well as massages to try to keep him calm. At some point, he was free to be around the rest of the boys again, and on the day he was first allowed to join us, he came up behind me when I was drawing and bit the back of my neck. I don't mean he gave me a nibble either. I was rushed to the nurse's station and had to get 23 stitches. I was released from the institution before this boy was, and every day I was there with him, I was terrified. He would look at me often with a hatred in his eyes. All he wanted to do was hurt me and every other boy there. I have no idea what became of him. My father remarried when I was 7 years old. My new stepmother had 3 kids. The youngest, a boy, was just a baby. Her oldest was also a boy, and he was a very nice kid. He was 2 years older than me. Her middle child was my age, and she was a girl. This girl, we'll call her Amy, was extremely troubled. She was a very, very mean child. When we first moved in with them, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and Amy would sometimes be there, in the doorway to my room, watching me. I'm not exaggerating, she actually did this, and my dad flipped out when I told him. Amy stopped doing it after she got in trouble, but after a few weeks, one night, I woke up to unbelievable pain. Amy had pushed a thumbtack into my forehead. I screamed and cried, and my dad and Amy's mom came running into the room. Amy got in trouble, of course, but not like she should have. My parents were in denial and figured she was just mad at me, but I told them there was something wrong with her and that nothing had happened and she had no reason to be mad at me and to do something like this. I could tell that my dad knew there was something more that was wrong. I tried telling my dad I thought she should go to a hospital, but at my age, I didn't really know what they were called. just a hospital for people with problems. We lived down a dirt road, and during the weekends, sometimes I was forced to play with Amy. I constantly told her to stop staring at me and to not come near me. I was living in hell. This little girl was crazy. All she talked about was becoming a doctor so she could do surgery, but maybe not good surgery, as she put it. She said it would be fun to cut people's bodies open and fill their cavities and arteries with broken glass and nails. To say I was scared of her would be an understatement. One day, I was playing in my room when she told me to come with her. She wanted to show me something. I followed her down to the creek by our house, and when I got there, I almost fainted. She had brutally killed a bunch of ducks. I ran home and cried. She told me that if I told anybody, she would stick thumbtacks into my head again. My dad and her mom eventually got divorced a couple years later, and it's been many years now. About 5 years ago, I saw on her mom's social media account that she was committed to a mental institution. Surprise, surprise. I was asked to house sit a few years back for my good friend Paul. He and his family were going to Disney World on vacation for 5 days, and he wanted me to stay there and feed their pets, and just make sure everything was cool while they were gone. I was unemployed, and he offered me $200. I really needed the money, so I agreed to do it. The first couple of days were fine, fun, and relaxing as a matter of fact. They had a hot tub that I took advantage of, and their 2 dogs were really awesome. On my 3rd night there, however, things started to get weird. I made a sandwich for dinner and left everything on the counter, or so I thought. About an hour later, I returned to the kitchen counter to grab a beer and put everything away, and I noticed the bread was already put up, and the mustard and mayonnaise were also already back in the fridge. I wasn't positive that I didn't put everything away, but I was pretty sure. I brushed it off and fell asleep watching TV. The next day I woke up and the TV was off. Not just the TV though, all the lights in the room, the TV and the speakers too. I was officially weirded out by this point and thought they might have had a ghost or something. Again I brushed it off. The rest of the day everything was cool. Nothing weird happened. Then, the next day, I went to the store, and when I came back I decided to get back in the hot tub. A while later I got out and realized my towel that I had left hanging on the hook on the deck was gone. I went inside, dripping all over the place, and found my towel in the master bathroom, flung over the side of the shower. I knew for sure I had not put the towel there, and I called Paul to ask him if he was used to weird shit like this happening in his house, and if they might have had a ghost. He told me no, that they hadn't experienced anything weird. He then told me to ask John. I asked who John was, and his answer confused me. He said it was his brother-in-law. I told him his brother-in-law has not come by since I'd been there. His response gave me goosebumps. He said John lives there with us. I was so freaked out that I tuned out everything else he said to me and finally said back to him, "I have not seen him one time. Why would you ask me to house sit if he was here too?" He then said John was disabled and he couldn't drive a car or get around the house easily. After hearing that, I told him again I haven't seen him once and that I was so freaked out I was gonna leave. He tried to keep talking to me, but I hung up and ran.
How many of these I make, there's always going to be someone out there who says, "But Barry, why can't we all just get along? Why do we have to judge each other and call each other peasants when we can all just be gamers?" For those of you out there who type that stuff in my comment section, maybe try watching the videos first. That very mindset, it's kind of what this series is all about. But the title, Barry, I judge a book by its cover. Oh, well, maybe that's why you'll never understand hyperbole. On to the quotes. All video games should be free anyway. They can be reproduced indefinitely with next to no effort. So an individual copy of a video game has no value. Like an audiobook is no different than an MP3 file. A video game is just a file. Video games should not be products. Okay, so I take issue with this, but my biggest problem is this next part. Piracy does not harm digital industries in any way. In fact, it's much more ethical to pirate than to buy a game. Okay, so I think I know what they were going for here, so let me try to iterate that. It is more ethical to pirate a game than to buy it from GameStop. This is because GameStop as a corporation just pockets that money and gives none of it to the developers or publishers. But it doesn't mean that it's just okay to pirate games all of a sudden. Look, if you want to steal games, go for it, but don't make up some self-righteous BS. Games take a long time to make. They require large teams and a lot of money, and to not acknowledge that, it just kind of makes you look entitled. They're free. They're not an integral part of the online service, much like McDonald's gives you free ketchup with your fries. No one ever says, gosh, this ketchup and salt packets are so costly because I had to buy the meal. Okay, alright, let's try that analogy in real life. Gosh, these salt and ketchup packets are so costly because I had to buy the meal. You're an idiot. They're free. They literally ask you if you want them. They come with the meal. Oh yeah. This analogy kind of sucks. Let's try a different one. You know they made me pay for the ketchup and salt? Really? Yeah, I have to pay a monthly or yearly fee just to have access to these condiments. Dude, why would you even pay that? I have both ketchup and salt, and I just use them whenever I want to. You could go to a different place. Yeah, but McDonald's has a lot of exclusive meals that I can't get anywhere else, so they kind of just got me by the balls there. Their burgers taste the same as any other place. Actually, if you go other places, you can get better food. It's fine. It's only a few dollars a year. If you can't pay a few dollars a year anyway, you shouldn't be eating food. God, you're an idiot. Also, I hate Sony and Microsoft. I just want to make that clear. Oh yeah, me too. That whole paid online thing, what's that all about? God, you're an idiot. It's always funny seeing articles like this because a quick visit to PC forums tells a different story. Oh, how we console owners point and chuckle at PC websites where the incumbent expert attempts to explain to some poor sap that his 3-month-old and thus obsolete Quad AMD 3000 and NVIDIA Orgasmo card won't actually run generic FPS 10 because it's got driver 1.1 instead of 1.1a. Try this. Insert disk/download game, start game, game runs. Bliss. You know when you have a grandparent who thinks they know things about technology and you just sit there and agree and smile? I just think this girl's gonna make a wonderful grandmother someday, that's all. AMD processors are a joke. They put them in consoles. Pfft. You're basically using a console CPU.
Consoles use APUs, smart guy. Don't worry. You'll get them next time.
So this guy here is selling his PC for $2,500. It has an i7 6700K, 32GB of RAM, a GTX 1070, a 475GB SSD, and a 3TB hard drive, 2 monitors, one of which being a 28-inch 4K monitor, as well as his Razer mouse and SteelSeries keyboard. And the reason he's selling it? Because it's not powerful enough for him to do his editing on, so he's hoping to buy a Mac instead. For $2,500 he could get one of these, which aren't even close to what he had. And what in the hell computer with those specs isn't powerful enough to run your editing programs? Well, Barry, maybe he just wanted to use the Mac OS. You think of that? Well, yeah, but he could have done that for free. And with better specs than any Mac on the market today. Look, I'm not upset that he wanted a Mac. I mean, more power to him, but his reasoning just didn't really make a lot of sense. So I went ahead and wrote a little bit more to this Dr. Seuss book, and I wanted to share it with you kids. Xbox is such a bore. The game library is so poor. But if you want more, go buy a PS4. There's more games to play. Give me PlayStation all day. Green is such a dud. Blue is so good. Xbox means twat. PlayStation's where it's at. PlayStation are on a mission. Xbox is no competition. They said uncompromised, more like downsized. Xbox did try. That you can't deny. But may I imply, the Xbox game library is just too damn dry. So what did you think? Kids, they're so honest. Don't even get me started on PC Masturbate, Lamau. Yeah, it can play games and make them look smoother and but who's gonna pay $3,000 to play games that look a bit pretty when it doesn't even matter in online gaming? To have a fat giant Minecraft block louder than a Honda on my desk? Don't try to educate me on how this shit works, because I watch my girlfriend build these disappointments all the time. Wait a minute. So what I'm getting from this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you have a girlfriend who builds computers and that doesn't turn you on? Okay, so here's my advice. You're gonna need to break up with her. She's probably unhappy. Maybe give her my number, just as a friendly voice to help her through the breakup. I'm not interested. No, it's not like that. That's hot. I mean, she's hot. I mean, I want to make her hot. Help you? Sorry. What was the quote about again? I got a little winded there. Since when is it HDR? It's HD. Stop trying to change the world with everything I. Hashtag never be an Apple customer again. Normally I'd agree with you, but HDR is a real thing. It's a technique used in photography and imagery to produce a greater dynamic range of luminosity. Apple didn't just make it up to sell stuff. It's been a thing for a while. But Macs remain the quicker of the two options. Even most premium PCs use SATA connections for flash storage, which aren't as fast as Mac's standard PCIe connections. Yeah, no. See, when I worked at Falcon and I built gaming computers, we always used PCIe or onboard M2 slots. Unless, of course, it was a hard drive. It's funny, I actually thought this article was talking about RAM for a second. I was about to flip. The article then states that there's a ton of hidden bloatware on Windows computers, which is true, but get this. Most manufacturers are working on fixing that, and bloatware directly affects the computer's performance? I think we found another grandparent here. Look, if you're sick of Microsoft's bloatware, then I'll have a link in the description for a PowerShell tool that will delete it off your computer. If these manufacturers really are trying so hard to fix the bloatware problem, then they're not very smart. A friend of mine made this in a couple minutes. Just right-click it and run with PowerShell. Done. I'm glad he made that for me too. I was starting to get bogged down by all that performance loss. I'm being completely honest when I say this. The Battle Royale genre is a genre that should never leave the PC. Consoles will never be able to handle them properly, and the controller feels awful navigating like needed. Really? Cause I know a lot of non-gamers who picked up a PS4 because of Fortnite. A lot of girls, if you can believe it. If you don't like a genre on a certain platform, then don't play it. But don't be wishing nobody else on that platform could play it. How about this? I don't like RPGs that much. I wish there were no role-playing games on the PC so that nobody could enjoy them. Sound good? Gamers are ruining the GPU markets for cryptocurrency miners. PC gaming should be banned. I think you mixed it up. It should be cryptocurrency miners are ruining the GPU markets for gamers. No, retarded gamers are wrecking the GPU markets. I'd be completely okay with making PC gaming illegal and putting all that break the law into FEMA camps.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Some people think the internet made us this way, and then other people think we've always just been this stupid. You just kind of gotta weigh it.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, lol, seriously, dude? What's the big deal about changing your gamer tag? I could see the point if people did it so they could start over on stats in a game or something, but come on, man, we pay for Xbox Live. We should have the right to change the name of our gamer tag at no extra cost, for crying out loud. Really? The stupidest? I assume you must know exactly how Microsoft runs Xbox Live then. How their servers are set up, how much they cost, how much maintenance they do, and how many support staff they've hired. Can you explain it to me so I can make smarter posts next time? Okay, thanks, bye. No, he's right. That was the dumbest money grab ever. Microsoft charged 800 points, or $8, to simply change your username. $7.99 if you had Xbox Live. This is something that every other website or DRM or subscription just allows you to do. You know what the biggest slap in the face is? They just let you change it now. No paywall. You just go to your profile and pick a name. So why was it ever locked behind $8? Because Microsoft was on top until this generation. Now Sony's pulling this crap. You guys know that one of the only reasons Sony brought their PlayStation Network to the PC is so they had a case to sue emulation devs if they wanted to? Makes sense as to why that service is so crap now, huh? God, I'm so glad I'm not under those companies' greedy BS anymore. Don't plug in USB on the front ports. Why not? He can't plug it into the case because the case is not directly connected to the computer/monitor. However, the motherboard USB ports do. Do you know what a computer even is? Yeah, I custom built mine. Your parents obviously didn't know what birth control was, though.
This is a front panel header USB 3.0. This is what makes your little blue suckers work. This is a USB 2.0. That is what makes your little black suckers work. All of the USBs in your computer connect to the motherboard. All of them. And before you start, no. Parents didn't know what birth control was. My mom wanted a girl.
What does cheating have to do with GPU? Well, you can't really game without a GPU. I'm not exactly sure, but I think they're able to ban people similarly like an IP ban, but instead it's their GPU. So they have to get an entirely new GPU just to play the game. And of course a new account too, probably. Wait, what? I've never heard of this one before. Imagine that! You cheat in a game of PUBG or CSGO and all of a sudden your GPU just doesn't work for that game anymore? Dude, that would suck. It doesn't actually work that way, and I'm not sure how that guy got this idea into his head, but if that was somehow a thing, I highly doubt people would cheat ever again. I'm still a console peasant, but I'm soon building my own PC and will soon join the master race. Okay, real quick, because I see this a lot. A console peasant isn't someone who plays games on their console. A console peasant is someone who spreads misinformation about their platform. Anyway, back to the quote. Only benefit to PC gaming is downloading the games for free versus paying for them on console. Yeah, that's the only benefit. Screwing over developers, that's what we love doing. It's not about the graphics, the free online, the upgradability, the mods, emulators, keyboard and mouse, the resolutions or frame rates, the FOV sliders. Nah, none of that matters. Oh, by the way, I have an article for you that you might enjoy. This is a survey taken in 2016 that goes over the amount of PC gamers who pirate video games. I mean, PC gamers are infamous for it, right? Probably 100% of us steal every game, huh? Well, according to this article, about 35% of PC gamers actively pirate video games, and if you look at the age statistics, it's easy to see where most of that is coming from. Now, I will admit that 35% is a lot, and that really sucks. Still, in 2017, at a developer conference, the most important platform to game devs was the PC. Huh. Seems this piracy stereotype might not be as big as a lot of you would like it to be. People who play games through emulators are the real peasants.
I'm nothing but a peasant. I'm just a peasant. 4K, I got it. Yes, of course I bought it. But I'm still a peasant.
If you buy a pre-built PC, you're a console gamer.
If you can't grow facial hair before you're 20, you're a woman.
But, Barry, you can't grow facial hair.
I know.
I've never understood the PC versus console debate. Like, on console you can use a big TV, and on PC, it's a measly little computer screen. Isn't the choice obvious, lol? You can use a big screen on both. Okay, but wouldn't you need to do all that plugging in and stuff and move around the computer or whatever when you need to? Seems easier to use consoles to me. They're stupid on purpose. There's no other explanation here. You want to see? Here's my PlayStation 5 plugged into my large screen TV downstairs. I've got the Vive hooked up to it and a controller. I can play any game I want to from the comfort of my couch. Be dumb some more. It pays me well. It's 12 months for $60. That's better than a $30 monthly internet bill. What? No, Sony doesn't cover your internet bill. You still have to pay that $60 a year on top of your $30 internet bill. Do people not realize this? I've been arguing all wrong this whole time. Android is impossible to use. Apple is for the people who want to use their phone, not constantly change it, and for users that don't want OS updates to take 3 years to get their device, for people who want to not have their year-old phone be outdated, for those who don't want to root or hack to access a full experience of a phone, for people who want to just get through the day and make the world a better place, like all of us. Oh god, I'm done. I thought it was bad enough to have vegans screaming at me about the animals I eat and the earth I kill, social justice warriors screaming at me about how much I ruined society for being white, and flat earthers telling me I'm part of the problem for growing up learning that the world was a sphere. But it ends when Apple fans are telling me that all I gotta do is become a sheep to make the world a better place. We crossed a line, people. This is too far. But before I go, I have one more thing to show you guys. This is an Inside Edition news report on why terrorists prefer the PlayStation as their main platform of communication. Enjoy.
Believe it or not, authorities say ISIS terrorists are using the popular game console to communicate.
And to start gathering my clothes and whatnot. I was on edge, and a few minutes later I had all my things and bolted out of that house. Paul called me 2 days later and told me John said he never saw me either. A few years ago, I was home alone at night. I was watching TV in the living room when I heard the doorbell ring. Whenever I hear the doorbell ring, especially when I'm home alone, I am very cautious to answer it. I walked up to the peephole without turning on the porch light, so they don't know if anyone is actually home or not, and I looked through it. It was really dark, but I can see a small figure, more like a black blob. I don't know its definite shape, and had to be around 3 to 4 feet. Doing like a dancing motion, dipping down and oscillating its arms outward. Think of a person moving their arms like wings gracefully. It was dark outside, but this figure was darker, so I could see this going on. After a few seconds, I stopped looking through the peephole because it was too freaky to look at. I regained some courage and looked back through it, and whatever it was gone. To this day, I still don't know what that was, and I get freaked out just thinking about it. I'll give you some backstory before I begin. I'm 21 years old now, but when this happened, I was only 14. I was home alone. I don't remember why, but I do remember I was on the phone with my friend when downstairs I heard a noise. Confused, I got up from my
What are we doing over here?
Word has spread that I'm in town and the dining room is full. We're all having the same 5-course set menu, cooked in the inn's tiny kitchen.
Just a shrimp cocktail to start you off.
Thank you. That's gnarly. That's ghastly. What the watery bits? What's that bit there?
That's probably the tomato juice, unless it's condensation from the shrimp.
Condensation. Was it frozen?
Yes.
Oh shit. Yeah, they're warm. That's a sad-looking shrimp. That's not a good start.
Okay. I will take that for you.
And everyone else seems to be hating it too. How can you fuck up a shrimp cocktail?
Okay, here's Gordon's.
Pecan crusted salmon.
Is it fresh salmon?
Frozen.
Frozen. That has to be the saddest looking plate of salmon anywhere in North America tonight. The seasoning is dreadful. It's very dry and...
Would you like me to take it for you?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take care of it.
Tastes great to me. I'm gonna kill him. I just want Gordon to take a long walk off a short pier. I want him to fall into a very deep pit, so he can't get out.
This is pathetic. Can John cook anything? Can he cook an egg?
He can cook an egg.
Could you ask him just to boil me an egg?
Sure thing.
Soft-boiled egg. He can't possibly mess up a soft-boiled egg, can he?
Soft-boiled egg for Gordon.
Okay, what? Egg?
Soft-boiled egg.
What? I'm just like going, wow.
No egg cup.
No.
I'll make my own egg cup. Fucking hell's bells. Oh, it's raw. Is this really happening? He can't even boil a fucking egg. Fucking thing's still got feathers on it.
Could have probably cooked that another 2 minutes. I'm absolutely ready to boot Gordon Ramsay out of my inn. Fire away, buddy.
Are you having a laugh at your family's expense?
No.
Big tall hat, big jacket, and you can't boil a fucking egg.
You want a fried egg? You want French toast, too? How about some pancakes?
What the fuck are you doing? You don't care, do you?
I do care.
You're a fucking joke.
Those are what we refer to as fighting words. Gutsy thing to do, especially in a kitchen full of sharp knives. It has never been a joke for me, ever.
Come play at my school. I'm the headmaster. You're acting like an absolute idiot.
No, but you're in my house.
That's right. I'm disgusted at your performance. Your big problem is you can't handle the truth. You don't like hearing it.
You don't even know me. You know
squat. It's a joke. Think about your wife. You're in to $1.1 million of debt. You're forcing her to live in hell. She's telling me that. And just think, over the last 13 years, but what you've fucking done. And not to you, to everybody else standing behind you.
I'm tired of hearing that. I don't need it anymore. Screw it. I really don't care if he leaves.
Fuck, man.
I hope I'll get a sense of what's really going on here from John's wife, Tina.
Gordon, this is my lovely wife.
How are you?
I'm stressed out.
What hotel were you running before this?
I was running a dental office. I worked in a dental office. I wasn't running anything except my home.
So why would you go from sort of teeth to a hotel?
Because he bought a hotel.
So you bought the hotel?
It was my negotiation.
You negotiated, you both bought it?
Yes.
Willingly or unwillingly?
Unwillingly.
I was very happy and content with the life that we had. So when John told me that we were buying the Roosevelt, I burst into tears.
How much did you buy it for?
$700,000.
$700,000. How much did you spend on it?
We owe $1,100,000.
Oh, so you haven't paid back the debt yet?
To the bank owner. Oh, yeah, no, the bank owns us.
God.
We sold our house we had here.
Cashed in a 401k, everything we had.
Oh, my word. Where's your house now, what you live in?
We live
up
on
in the
top of
attic.
building.
This is my hell. I have had terrible experiences here. Business experience, financial hardship, everything's just fallen apart here for me.
You seem serious, you seem joking. It's almost like you're playing at it.
It is kind of an entertainment, though, to a certain degree.
$1.1 million, that's an expensive entertainment.
Well, yeah.
I didn't realize it was this bad. How's the relationship?
We're in a rough place.
We went through marriage counseling, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago?
Because of this business?
Oh, yeah.
And still working together 7 days a week?
Yes, 24/7.
You're a
Sleeping in
brave
the same
lady.
bed. I'm ready for something to change. I'm ready for anything at this point. I just feel like I'm gonna suffocate.
I'm gonna get my bag unpacked and I'll catch up with you later. Thank you.
Tina looks ready to bail out, and all John can do is laugh. He thinks being over $1 million in debt is entertainment. I think this marriage is in as much trouble as the inn.
Clearly in denial, but more importantly, a man that won't man up and take responsibility.
I've been told that tonight, the Roosevelt Inn is holding a murder mystery dinner. It's an event they host once a month. I have a feeling it's going to be hard to forget.
And if you'll head on into there, I'll get you all checked in and ready to go. You look fabulous. We usually always have a lot of fun with this. We're going to continue to have fun with this.
Are you dressed in that for this evening?
I play the part of Sherlock Holmes, old man.
You're playing an Englishman.
I am playing an Englishman, and I even have the pipe to go with it. I've studied this accent long and hard. In fact, mine is better than your British accent. I actually don't know where Gordon got his accent. He obviously doesn't practice it very much. Mine is far more authentic than his is. Absolutely, yes.
Wow.
While John prances around as Sherlock Holmes, I wonder what Tina does during these events.
Oh my God. What have you got on? This is crazy. What happened to you?
It's murder mystery night, sir.
It's gone from an inn to Little House on the Prairie. I mean, honestly.
It'll be my job this evening to cook your dinner.
So while John gets to play Sherlock Holmes, his wife is stuck in the kitchen. Wake up, John. This is not the 1800s anymore.
John definitely liked dressing up more for the murder mysteries because he's not in the hot kitchen. He's out there hamming it up with the guests, playing Sherlock Holmes.
Okay. Right, I'm not too sure what to make of all this. It's a little bit bizarre. Slightly weird.
I wonder if this event even makes any money.
Is this profitable?
It is profitable. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, we made $200 tonight.
$200 for all this work?
And are they all staying over?
Oh, no. Most of the locals, you know, when they come for a murder mystery, they usually don't do an overnight.
Clearly tonight's about feeding John's ego, not filling his bank account.
Oh, well, that could explain it then. No, oh, here now. Oh, my word.
Oh, I say.
Oh my fucking God.
Here, come to, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it appears the game is afoot.
You know, their goal with the murder mysteries has always been to get people in, but if I'm not filling the rooms, what's the point?
And I would have gone away with it too if it wasn't for you and your meddling guests.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Well, there you have it. Brilliant of all of you.
Thank goodness that's over. It's time to find out from John what on earth he thinks he's doing.
Sit down, you must be shattered.
I'm tired.
I bet you are.
Stick a fork in me.
That was mad.
Was it mad?
Yeah. You're in the kitchen, busting your ass off, working hard to serve all those people. And John, you were out prancing around like a sort of actor.
This is the thespian thing.
It's an inn, it's not a theatre. But you seem to enjoy it.
You have to force yourself to like doing it. I mean, it's on stage for 3 hours. Ian.
The problems at the Roosevelt are elementary. Can I just have a word with you on your own?
Certainly.
Oh, sure.
This place is sinking because John refuses to take anything seriously. You love being an entertainer. Don't you dare tell me that that is hard. This whole fucking thing was put together for your fantasy.
Well, that's kind of what this night is. It is entertainment. We put on a show.
You're pretending to be Sherlock Holmes, and upstairs, we're empty. You're in the shit financially. We're in ruins, and if you put the same amount of effort into filling this place, just one room booked tonight
Would have made more profit than the whole murder mystery and all that work that went into it.
I mean, this is insane. And you prance around like some fucking idiot.
While your wife is slaving away in the kitchen.
Do you have any care in the world, apart from yourself?
When you get a psychology degree.
Oh, when I get
You
one.
come and tell me what's wrong with me.
Here we go.
You obviously think you are a psychologist.
Big denial again.
No, I'm not in denial. I just don't know what you want.
It's only your own fucking stupidity to why we're in the shit this far.
Well, that is probably true.
So then man up and act responsible.
Okay, I'm done with that.
Oh.
I'm done with that interview.
Oh,
Here,
Sherlock.
over. No.
Does that massage your ego
Done.
a bit more?
You know, no, just talk to my hand, you know.
Oh,
on
talk
the
to
way
my
out.
hand. Oh, what a fucking
night.
idiot.
Have a
You're
good
not
night.
10 years old. You need to grow up and stop running away from the truth.
Fucking joke.
blind and deaf to all the violence, and I've always felt this way. On the wind, a smell of misery, fear and death perfume the air. It begins again in mystery, and I always end up there, always unsuspecting, so easy to lure them away from all the angels within. I am running from something I'm becoming, unstoppable and I'm coming from the something that I'm running from, becoming one, always running like something might be coming to follow me, and I'm running from the something that I'm coming from, becoming one. I am letting go of all I know from this buried well of consciousness. I can barely hear the rain. Everyone becomes anonymous. All their faces seem the same. Always unrelenting, descending into our own nightmare. From this twisted fantasy, falling far away from the beauty of annihilation, into the faceless space beyond. I am running from something I'm becoming. something they all run from. I want you to be gone, but I know you've just begun. Why am I now to everything I have done? There's no going back for me. Becoming has taken its toll on me. I am running from something I'm becoming. Unstoppable and I'm coming from the something that I'm running from. Become one always running, like something might be Like a dream where I'm falling and calling out. My resistance is silent. I can feel but I still can't control myself. Please forgive me now. Shadow, nothing, all I am. Stalking, killing, all I can. I was born from eternal night, by infernal right, and I need you carry on. Neurons fire when I violate, pupils dilate, and I feel you carry on. I could scream but I know I won't hear myself. I'm a slave to synapses. In my dream is the sound of a lullaby calling me the one. I'm undone, and I'll all run from the chosen one. Hermit, martyr, just as planned. Asking why must I curiosity. I'm chewing the bones of my own. Death be my dignity. Execute hemlock philosophy. Poison fills the cup of the carpenter. Love lost on me. Life so costly. No reason for grieving. Love lost on me. Life so costly. Bring me down. I can see them everywhere. They're all around me. They're waiting for me. Descending unrelenting beauty of annihilation. Your curiosity feeding off my animosity. And the reason is treason. All that's good and clean, you can put it all on me. Bring you down. I can see them everywhere. They're all around me. They're waiting for me. Descending unrelenting beauty of
on, and I yelled down the stairs, "Guys?" I was assuming I would hear them respond, but I didn't. I didn't hear a thing. I did hear my dog growling downstairs, and thought that's what I must have heard the first time, although it always made me scared when I would hear her growl. It put me on edge. I felt comfort though because my friend was on the phone with me. I went downstairs and turned the corner into the kitchen. As I turned the corner, I saw the door to our basement close. It scared the shit out of me, and I froze where I was standing. My dog was growling outside, looking in at me, and started freaking out when she saw me and started jumping on the glass door. This didn't help and scared me even more. I ran over and let her inside, and she immediately ran to the basement door and started growling at it. That was all I needed to see, and was freaking out to my friend on the phone. I told her I was sure somebody was down there and I was gonna leave. I felt much better when I went outside onto the front lawn and saw my neighbor outside getting his mail. I went over to him, and it was weird because I have never spoke to him until then, and I told him I was sure somebody was in my house. He was very understanding, and he told me to come with him while he grabbed his phone and called my parents. I didn't know he had their number, but I was so glad he did. My mom believed me right away, but my dad took some convincing. I felt bad for ruining their night, but somebody was in our house. I was sure. I sat with my neighbor awkwardly on his front porch, staring at my house. While we waited, I saw the master bedroom light turn on. My neighbor and I flipped out, and he couldn't believe it. When my parents got home, my mom came over to us, and my dad and my neighbor slowly went inside the house. I think they were scared as hell, but neither one said so. They ended up not catching the person, and I was happy, because I was afraid of my dad getting hurt. My dad did say that he thinks he just missed whoever it was. The back door was unlocked the whole time. It was so creepy. I never felt comfortable in that house after that, even when my parents were home. And still I get scared sometimes when I think too much about it. Hey, I'm new to the forum, but I have a really creepy story to share. Around 10 years ago or so, I was working as a pizza delivery driver. I had just turned 18, and it seemed like a good first job for me. So that you can understand the story and my experience better, just know that I am a female, and I'm on the petite side. So I hadn't been working at this pizza place very long before this happened. It was a Saturday night, around 11 o'clock. Why it is okay to have a petite young girl deliver pizzas at this time of night, I have no idea, but I was. I had one delivery to make, at an apartment complex a few miles up our main street. I figured this one would be quick, and I'd probably get a decent tip because I always seem to when delivering to this complex. I went to the apartment number listed on the receipt and knocked. A man answered the door. This man was tall, good-looking, with long brown hair that was kept and combed to the side. If I remember correctly, he was wearing blue jeans and a turtleneck long-sleeve shirt. When he answered, he seemed very happy to see me. He said hello and told me to hang on for a second and kinda closed the door in my face. I assumed he was getting the money when he opened it back up, and I saw another man now, standing near a bedroom door close by. The man had a big smile and was honestly pretty attractive. He asked me to come inside and set the pizza on the table. I looked at his hands, and he wasn't holding any money. I thought this seemed weird, and I didn't trust the situation. I told him I'd just wait here for the payment, and he insisted that I come inside to put the pizza on the table. I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't do that, and he said something like, "It's fine, I'll get your money. Just come in and put it down." I told him I didn't feel comfortable entering people's houses and that it was against our policy anyway. He then stopped smiling and said, "Just come in." I felt scared now and told him I wasn't going in one last time. He then slammed the door in my face, and it scared me even more. I hurried back to my car and drove back to the store. The guy obviously didn't want the pizza. It was very frightening. I wish I could say I quit after that, but I didn't. And I even delivered pizza to that same complex a few more times before I started another job. Thank God I never saw that man or the other guy that was there again. Do you ever have the feeling when you're walking somewhere at night that the person behind you is following you? That happened to me, and not very long ago either. I was walking home from my friend Nicole's house. She only lived like 7 blocks down from my street, but we live in the downtown area of a huge city. I should have known better, but I do now. I was walking, and I could just feel that somebody was behind me at some point. I'm not sure how. Instinct, I guess. I turned around kinda to see who it was, and it was exactly what you don't want to see. A tall man, wearing dark clothes, with his hands in his hoodie pockets. I started picking up my pace because of the natural nervousness it brought me. I thought for sure he wasn't actually following me, but I started to hear his steps when I couldn't before. I turned again and saw that he was walking really fast behind me now, about 30 feet away. I became scared and paranoid and thought, should I actually start running? And after I heard his steps become much faster, I realized he had started running. So I did too. I turned around while running to see him full on sprinting at me. This damn near gave me heart failure. I ran faster and faster. He wasn't gaining speed on me, and I saw the sign of a liquor store fairly close. I heard his steps start to fade as I got closer to it, and I ran inside and up to the counter where the very concerned man that was working working there was looking at me. I told him I was sorry, but I thought somebody was following me. I looked out the door, and the man never passed by. I called my boyfriend and told him what just happened to me, and he was pissed. He said he would come get me, and I stood there telling the man at the counter about it too. My boyfriend came in and he said nobody was outside the store. That proved to me that the guy was actually chasing me. I was remodeling a house about a year back, down in Memphis. This couple that had hired me on had money, and they were expecting a baby when I first met them. The wife was pretty far along, and it turned out she went into labor only about a week into my work there. I showed up for work the morning after they had gone to the hospital, and the husband left me the key and told me to help myself to anything in their refrigerator, and they probably wouldn't be home for a couple days. So I was putting up drywall in their family room, listening to music. I was trying to keep busy when suddenly I heard something. It sounded like somebody hit a drum. I set the stuff I was holding down and turned down my radio. I didn't hear anything anymore, so I walked over to the foyer and peered down the hallway that led to the master bedroom. I'm not shy, so I hollered out, "Hello?" I got nothing back. Then I heard a door close down the hall. I was looking down the hall when I heard it, and to me it sounded like the door to the master bathroom had opened up. I said hello. Again I heard nothing. I went back to work, but only a few minutes later I was holding a full sheet of drywall, about to drill it up, when out of the corner of my eye I saw someone. I turned, but they had vanished. I heard them run down the hall. I pretty much dropped what I was holding and said hello again. I was breathing heavy now because I saw a person in the corner of my eye. I was certain. I walked over to the hallway again and looked down. I saw no one and heard nothing. I looked at my watch and it was 6:19. I told myself I was good for the day and walked back over to where I was working. I plugged in my drill charger and slid a battery into it, and I grabbed my keys on the counter and walked outside. I came back to their house the next morning and continued working. Before I did though, I walked down the hallway and checked the rooms. Nobody was there but me. Later on, I asked the husband when they got home who that might have been, and he said he had no idea, that nobody lived there but them. I'm certain I saw somebody in that house. So my wife and I were celebrating 5 years of marriage. We were staying in this nice hotel in Santa Cruz called the Dream Inn. It was September, so it wasn't too hot outside, and not cold either. It was perfect. One night we got back to our hotel from dinner. My wife got in the shower, and I was sitting on the balcony overlooking the ocean. I was drinking a beer and just enjoying the scenery. It was really cool. I could see the ocean from there, the wharf, and the boardwalk. As I was sitting there, a man walked over, and from underneath me he said, "Hey, your wife is gorgeous, sir. You better keep your eye on her." I took offense to this asshole approaching me and saying this, so I just said nothing back. He walked off, and I forgot about it. The next day we were walking along the wharf and saw a nice restaurant we wanted to eat lunch at. We went inside and sat down. I noticed soon after that one of the waiters was being creepy and kept making a point to look over to us as he walked by. My heart skipped a beat when I realized that the waiter was the same guy that was under my balcony the night before. I stared him down and he just smiled at me. It really angered me and, quite frankly, scared me. I told my wife about it and she agreed that we should eat somewhere else. We were only there for one more day, and I didn't see that asshole again. But man, that was creepy. That guy must have been on a lunch break or something and followed us. I have no idea. Hey there. I have to share this with you guys. I think this story would qualify to be on here. I work for a pest management company. I want to remain anonymous and don't want to name my company, but it's a pretty big one in the US. I'm a termite guy, which means I do the really tough work. I have to crawl under houses and spray termite killer on the wooden beams that hold up the house, as well as drill holes in concrete and dig ditches along the perimeter of houses. Not too many scary things can happen, I guess, while doing this job. It's really tough work, but this one day, like 6 months back, I had the surprise of a lifetime. I was working at this really old, run-down place up in the hills in my state, and the woman who lived at the house was really nice. She was an older broad and just wanted her house saved before the termites literally ate the whole thing. So everything was going as it would normally, and I was going under the house in the crawl space to spray. As I was crawling though, I smelled something really foul. I thought to myself, this smells like nothing I've ever smelled, but it was really strong. Not strong enough to stop me though, or make me puke or anything, but man, I tell you, it was bad. I was crawling, spraying, and trying not to breathe too much because of the smell. As I crawled, I ran into a body. It was almost completely rotted, but there was still flesh I could see. It felt surreal, honestly. I couldn't believe I had stumbled onto it. It felt like winning the lottery of stumbling onto something so weird. The body was obviously put there, and I became aware that the nice woman I was working for might have committed murder and put this body there. From what I could tell, it was an adult, but I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. I actually called my boss from under the house, and he told me to get out right away and tell the homeowner. I got all detective on him and said I shouldn't tell her, and maybe our company should just call the cops. He said no and insisted that I tell her right then. I did, and she was shocked, asking if I was sure and all that. I told her I was pretty damn sure I had just found a rotting corpse under her house, and she called 911. I left the house without finishing my work, of course, and I wasn't able to find out if she had done it or what the hell the deal was with it all. I looked online, but never found a thing. Sometimes I feel like driving up there to see if her SUV is still parked there. It honestly wasn't too scary after it set in, but when I first saw the corpse, I swear it looked like the skeleton was looking right at me. I work at a pizza joint in Chicago, and I unfortunately have the shitty responsibility of delivering pizzas, usually on the weekends, and usually at night. I've asked my boss for day shifts, but she seems to ignore my requests and give me whatever shifts I don't want the most. I know being a pizza delivery man is somewhat of a dangerous job, but I never imagined anything like what happened to me a few months ago could actually happen. There is this one customer that always calls in and acts strange as hell on the phone. Sometimes he will just hang up on you. Sometimes he'll order pizzas normally, but make crazy sounds while he does, and then hang up. We've always thought this guy was just an idiot playing pranks. He would make really weird comments too, like, "I want to order a large pizza with pineapples, mustard, and your skin." I'll never forget that one. We usually just hang up on his ass now, and we always know it's him calling because his number is saved in our system. So he called again a few months ago and ordered a pizza normally, no bullshit, no weird comments or sounds, and gave his address too. I thought it would be interesting to finally deliver to this guy, and when I drove up to his house, it was something you'd see in a scary movie. An old as hell looking place right on the line where we don't deliver, not in the busy part of the city where most of our orders come in. The house looked like it was about 100 years old, and there were no lights on that I could see. I wasn't scared or anything, just looking forward to seeing what he looked like. When I went to the front door, I rang the bell, but it wasn't working, so I knocked. I realized I forgot the guy's soda and thought he'd give me shit for sure, or just freak out on me. Nobody answered right away, so I knocked again on this big door. He opened up after that second time. He was wearing this weird-looking mask around his mouth. Only his mouth. His eyes were opened wide, and I told him how much the pizza was, and that I was sorry I forgot the drink. He looked down, I think, and then said it's okay, and then looked at me again. I stood there looking at him for like 5 seconds in silence when I got bored of his shit and told him the amount again. He said okay, and then asked me, has anyone ever attacked me before? I told him no, and if they did, they'd be sorry. He then took off his mask that was covering his mouth, and he had big-ass scars all around his mouth. I have no idea what they were from, and can't even imagine what they might have been from, but he looked seriously messed up. He smiled at me, and his lips were all cracked. I noticed he wasn't about to hand me some money, so I told him I was leaving. I turned around and started walking down the steps, and he screamed at me and slammed the door. This bastard was crazy, and I don't think any of his shit was to be funny. That final scream he gave me was creepy as hell, even though I kind of expected him to do something like that. He has called several times since then, and we always just tell him now that he is on our no delivery list. He usually just screams and hangs up, or cusses out whoever is on the phone. Hello. I want to share a scary story that happened to me when I was 10 years old. It happened at my house in the middle of the night. I woke up to get some water as I usually did. I walked out of my bedroom and went down the stairs. My house was 2 stories, but really it was 3 if you count the set of stairs you have to climb to reach the front door and the back door. So this was my usual routine. I would wake up somewhere around 2 a.m. and go downstairs to get water. I would stand in the kitchen and drink while looking out the back window and down at our backyard. I always did this and would imagine how scary it would be if I saw somebody back there. This one night, I did see someone back there. As I was drinking my water, I saw a figure standing against the fence in the back of the yard. I didn't know what they were doing or if they were looking at me, but they were dressed in all black. I stood there frozen with fear until the person started moving. They started walking nonchalantly across my backyard. It was terrifying to see. They were walking over to the wooden steps to get to the back door. I ducked down and ran back up the stairs as fast as I could. I tried opening my dad's bedroom door, but it was locked. I knocked and knocked. It took forever for him to finally say, "Yeah." I tried whispering that somebody was in our backyard, but also loud enough to where he could hear me. Nothing happened, so I repeated myself a little bit louder. He finally opened the door and I started crying. I told him I saw a person in our backyard. He told me to go in his room, and I did, while he went down the stairs. I waited for a minute and couldn't handle it, so I left his room and slowly started going down the stairs again. Before I could reach the bottom, he turned the corner and scared me, saying nobody was back there. I told him I saw somebody for sure walking towards the door, and he went back over to the kitchen to look out the window. We both looked out and saw nothing, saw nobody. After him asking me numerous times if I was sure, he called the police. They arrived pretty fast, and they checked our backyard, the front yard, everywhere, but didn't find anyone. We went back to sleep and nothing else happened. For some reason, the person didn't try to enter our house. I'll never forget seeing that person back there though, and I still can't look out my windows at night. I was home alone one night when I was a teen. Everything was fine until I woke up in the middle of the night to get some water. I walked out of my room, down the stairs, and as soon as I hit the bottom landing, I saw that there was a figure sitting in the old chair in our living room. I stood there for a few seconds, completely in shock and terror. The person sitting there began to move and stand up. I turned and fled back up the stairs. I ran back into my room and slammed and locked my door. Completely in tears, I sat on my bed in the dark, staring at the door. My dad appeared at my door not 10 seconds after I closed it and asked why I just slammed my door and what was going on. I opened up for him, and in between my sobs, I told him I saw somebody downstairs. I asked if it was him, and he said no, that he had just come from his bedroom right next to mine. It was just the two of us living there. He checked the house and found nobody except an old-looking business card for this hotel in our city. It was tucked between the cushions of the chair. He checked into it, but nothing became of it to my knowledge. It was the scariest night of my life. This happened on a Friday. I was in high school, and I had just walked home after school. I walked into my house, and my parents weren't home yet. This was typical. They got off work at 5, and I was always home alone for a couple hours after school. I was sitting in my bedroom, watching TV. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and my bedroom door was open. As I was watching, someone walked by my bedroom very fast and scared the living shit out of me. I'm an only child, and I knew that whoever had just walked by was not supposed to be in my house. I got up and thought about jumping out of my bedroom window. I was very creeped out and decided that was probably the best idea. I opened my window and crawled out. Luckily, my bedroom was on the first floor, and when I hit the grass, I turned around and looked up at my window, mortified that I'd see somebody standing there, or somebody about to jump out after me. Relief. Nobody was there. I ran to the gate, and the damned lock was so old and rusted, it made so much noise trying to undo the damned thing to open it. I got it open after making so much noise and ran to the street and started going down the sidewalk. I stopped, and my heart sank when I realized I had changed my pants into gym shorts when I got home, and my cell phone was still in my jeans pocket. There was no way I was going back inside, but I did start walking back toward my house, and when I reached it, I stopped and tried to see somebody through my front window. Of course, I didn't. I walked up to my front door and very quietly opened it. It creaked open very slowly, and as soon as the door stopped, after hitting the closet door behind it, I heard somebody say, "Get out." I sprinted away and called my dad at the grocery store that was kind of close to our house. He came to the store to pick me up, and I told him we should call the cops, but he wasn't afraid, and he just walked right into the house when we got home. Nobody was in there, and he assured me that he checked everywhere. I only went inside when he said he was 100% sure there was nobody inside the house. Early the next morning, I woke up because my bedroom was freezing. I sat up, and my window was wide open. It was winter, and there was no way in hell I would leave it open the way it was. I told my dad, but he of course didn't really believe me. My mom seemed a bit creeped out because she could see how serious I was. Whoever had walked by my bedroom was still in there. They were in my room while I slept. When I was 24 years old, I experienced something so strange, so scary, that I just had to write about it and share it with the world. It is absolutely true and was the scariest thing that has ever happened in my life. I was traveling at the time, going to visit my best friend who had moved a few states away from me to go to college. One day, I was driving in Ohio, if I remember correctly. I was on a long highway that stretched across the state when out of nowhere my car died. I shifted to the side of the road where I eventually came to a stop. I didn't run out of gas. I had just filled up at the last town. I tried starting my car, and I was very happy when it actually started. I was confused and was worried about why the hell it just died on me. As I started to pick up speed and get back on track, my car started making weird noises, and it sounded like something was grinding on something else. I looked up and saw a sign that showed that there was a gas station and food at the next exit. My car was moving, but with this grinding noise, I decided to get off the highway and take a look at it at the gas station. There were only 2 places off this exit that I could see, a gas station with 1 pump and an old-looking diner not too far off next to it. I pulled into the gas station and it looked closed. I checked my watch and quickly realized this was strange as hell. It was only 2:30 p.m. What kind of gas station closes before this time? I got out of my car and approached the glass door entrance to the station. I put my hands up and cupped the glass around my eyes to see inside. The place looked abandoned. It was obvious nobody was there, and I turned and looked around me. I felt a bit uneasy at this moment when I saw that no other people or cars were around me. What the hell? Where am I? I checked my phone and of course, I had no service. I looked up at the sky and it was white. The clouds were moving fiercely and it was cold as hell outside. I decided to get back in my car and drive it over to the diner. When I reached this place, I thought for sure it was closed as well. But to my surprise, before I could even reach the door after getting out of my car, an old woman opened the door to the place and greeted me with a smile. She looked nice, and I was so relieved to see somebody else and maybe get some hot food in my stomach. She said hello and asked if it was just me, did I want a booth, blah blah blah. I told her yes, it was only me, and a booth sounded fine. This diner looked very old-fashioned, and there was no other customers inside. The woman showed me to my seat, and I scooted into the booth. I looked up at her, and she was wearing an old apron with stains all over it. Her teeth were old, cracked, and yellow. She had a pleasant voice though, and she seemed to be a very nice person. She handed me a menu and asked what I'd like to drink. I told her a Coke or Pepsi would be great, and she smiled and said she'd be right back. I sat there looking at this menu, and there was dirt on it. It looked like it had been sitting outside for years. I cleaned it off, and the food that was on it that was available was very basic. Burger, chicken sandwich, fries, salad. That was pretty much it. I decided to order the burger with some fries. A few minutes passed, and she hadn't returned with my drink yet. I was anxious to ask her if there was a mechanic around that could look at my car. A few more minutes passed, and I started thinking, what the hell is going on back there? I yelled out, "Hello?" in as nice a voice as possible. I got no response. At this point, I was annoyed, and I got up. I walked over to the door that led into the back cooking area and swung it open, about to ask where my drink was. To my surprise, the back of the diner was empty. There was no cooks, no fryers, no grills, nothing. The woman was nowhere in sight. It was obvious that this diner was not a running establishment, and I felt sick to my stomach. I started to walk into the back area when I heard the scariest, most evil old lady laugh I've ever heard. I stopped and backed up out the door into the front. I turned and walked out the door I came in from. I ran down the 3 steps and over to my car and got inside. Thank God my car started, and I floored it out of there. As I was driving away, I looked into my rearview mirror and saw the woman standing in the middle of the road. I spent the night at my girlfriend's house one night and had to leave really early in the morning to go to work. So early, it was still dark outside when I left, and would be for a few more hours. She lived in a rural town about 60 miles from my house and work, and when I got in my car and started driving, there wasn't the usual street lights lining the roads to guide me. The only light came from my headlights. About 10 miles into my drive, my car started to slow down and eventually came to a stop. I first checked my gas, and it was almost full. I'm not very car trouble savvy, so I dug my phone out of my jacket pocket and swiped the screen. Nothing happened. I realized that my phone was dead, and immediately after that, I came to the realization that I had forgot to plug it in last night before we went to sleep. So here I was, stuck in my car, on the side of a rural street, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. I started thinking of things to do. I could start walking. No. Bad idea. It was dark as hell out here, and I wouldn't be able to see anything while walking. And on top of that, somebody could hit me. I concluded the only thing I could do was sit in my car and wait for daylight, which is a very stressful and scary thing to have to come to terms with. It was winter, and I started getting cold. I tried starting my car over and over, to no avail. I gave up and crossed my arms. I sat in the dark car, on the dark street, for about 10 minutes just looking into the darkness in front of me, before I squinted my eyes and noticed somebody walking toward my car directly in front of me. They were about 30 yards away. The only thing I could see was the outline of their body. They stopped walking right after I noticed them. I got really scared and just gazed at this outline for the longest time. In a sudden movement, they started walking again, but fast. In a few seconds, they reached my driver's side door and tried opening it. Did they think the car was empty? Holy hell, did they see me in here? I leaned away from the door and window, onto the center console. After failing to open my locked door, they stood there for a moment, and then very suddenly turned and walked away in the direction they came from. I was so confused and creeped out at this. Why would they walk back that way, the way they came? I sat there in the dark wondering what just happened, when all of a sudden, I saw 2 headlights come on in front of me. The car was parked on the same side of the road as mine, but facing me. Had the person stopped when they saw my car? What would they do next? How did I not see them stop there? After a few moments, they started their engine and turned their car around, driving off down the road. A few hours later, the sun was rising, and a truck stopped next to me and asked if I was having trouble. I asked if I could use their cell phone, and with it, I called my girlfriend, who picked me up soon after.
I met a college girl that I was living with in a defunct fraternity house. They had lost their charter for reasons I didn't first know. We fell for each other, and I moved in with her. It was a great apartment complex with pool tables and giant showers. One night when we were drunk, she took me to a room that was empty. It had 2 bunk beds, and above one bed was a secret door. It led to an upstairs room where most of the hazing took place. The story goes that one night during a party, in the dead of winter, a girl was raped by some frat boys. They just left her up there in the cold, and she ended up dying from freezing to death. One of the frat boys was so distraught by the incident that he went up there one day and painted her picture on the wall. then hung himself from the rafters. Whilst we were up there, I could swear that the eyes on the picture would follow you around the room, and there were reports of crying coming from up there some nights. I never went up there again. This happened ages ago, when I used to babysit. I was maybe 13 at the time, living in the countryside, and was babysitting most of the children on my street, which was around 20 houses. This particular neighbour would love to go out on Wednesday, because there would always be this Latin dance class that was going on in a nearby bar. So I was used to babysitting for her and knew that she'd always come back very late. That specific night, the oldest of the three was a little difficult and didn't want to go to sleep. I struggled putting him into bed, and afterwards was quite tired. I studied my maths a little, and around midnight decided to take a nap until the kid's mum came back. A few minutes after falling asleep, I hear someone frantically knocking on the door trying to open it. It was the neighbour with her 2 young children.